Hello, my name is Thomas Ian James, and welcome to the.
Hold on, this seems very familiar, doesn't it? Well, yeah, welcome to my 2-year anniversary, and today I'm going to celebrate with something else that also had its anniversary this week, Torchwood Miracle Day. So, let's head over to America to find out what really happened on the day that no one died. But first, a quick plot synopsis for those who may have forgotten what actually happens in this season. Basically, on one simple day of Earth, no one dies. Anybody who's about to die can't die, as it seems that everyone has become immortal. But the price of immortality comes to the price of uncovering the three masterminds of this change. And what does it have to do with the re-establishment of Torchwood? Right, so that out of the way, let's get into my thoughts on these episodes. But before that, a true warning to those who haven't seen the series, please watch it before watching this look back, as I will be making thorough references to events in this episodes, and I don't want to get anybody confused. So, okay? Good. So, we start off with what I think is one of the better episodes of the season, as it begins with an effective hook. What if the most despicable person in the world, our example here being Oswald Baines played by Bill Pullman, didn't die when he was supposed to? It works to really pull you in and place you into the story of the season, with it being the free title sequence with new character Rex's accident, which brings him and Esther, his associate in the CIA, into the story. I like the juxtaposition of learning the bigger mystery of the apparent miracle and the scenes set in America, whilst the scenes set with the returning characters, Gwen and Reese in Wales, are more about how this affects them and Gwen's family, especially with how her dying father gives us a good reason to find out more and to go back into our old life of Torchwood. However, this episode isn't all perfect. Once Jack returns 20 minutes in, I do get a sense of the episode trying to fit too much. With how he sort of interacts with the new characters, Esther and a doctor named Vera in America, and his return to Gwen and Reese in Wales with Rex tagging along. I think had the episode kept Rex in America and then found a way for Jack and Gwen to get arrested in Wales and brought to America, then maybe it could have worked a little bit better, but I do still like the reunion on the beach with Gwen shooting a helicopter and a rendition at the end by Rex. Those moments did really keep me entertained throughout. Overall, it's a good start of the series which hooks you in and keeps you intrigued and entertained throughout. We follow on from the first episode and the effective episode of Jack, Gwen, and Rex trapped on a plane, how they have to deal with an almost impossible altercation that happens 25 minutes in. With the altercation, the episode decides to deliver suspense, action, and a lot of humour from all the characters involved as they aim to solve this altercation. Even Esther herself has a great subplot where she has to escape from people inside the CIA, as she has to keep herself away from those who are trying to wipe her out, which brings even more suspense, which is a big part of the episode. Unfortunately, I didn't like the scenes of Oswald and new character Jilly in this episode. They effectively distract from the overall episode and the scenes seem out of place. I think it would have been probably more effective if they'd not had been told this episode and we'd be left with more of an intrigue and the mystery of what happened after the survival in the events of episode 1. Overall, I think this episode worked well, and I think it's probably one of the more underrated episodes of the series in general. Straight after the great first and second episodes, we unfortunately get a weaker third episode that really messes up the flow of the start of the season. The reason why it's weak? Well, it's down to the main team and how the events in the early part of the episode don't feel entirely earned, because Rex and Esther hasn't been established yet as part of the team dynamic, and also the fact that they disband after a silly little argument 20 minutes in which let them go their separate places. Now, had this been episode 6, this probably would have felt fine, but since this is episode 3, it feels way too early for them to do this, and I wish they could have kept this for a later episode instead of now. Strangely enough, the part of the episode which I actually prefer here is the moments of Oswald and Jilly and how it ties into the plot, but also how it's really effective in showing how one person can get manipulated for nefarious purposes using the right kind of words. It's a great idea, and I also think it's an effective second half of the two of them being involved with the plot with the main team, which shows that the team aren't ready and they need to go undercover if they want to find the people who brought the miracle to this world to work. Overall, anything with the main team is great, but the episode does mess up the breakdown aspect by being way too early into the series to actually count. Okay, as much as I didn't like the last episode, if there's one episode that I really want to defend from the season, then this is going to be it. The main advantage of why I like this is because it takes on a different style as it goes for an undercover espionage, like in Hustle or in the Bourne films, where they break into Fight Club offices but they also have somebody on their tail, which honestly made me very intrigued from start to finish. Even the Oswald stuff is done well, as I think it also has the sense of trying to gain popularity by doing a simple thing, which some other people are just afraid to do sometimes, and yes, I can tell from his performance it could be seen as over the top, but I think he pulls it off very well, and you can tell that Bill Pullman is having all sorts of fun during these scenes. Overall, I'm willing to defend this episode on the account of its style and its great use of characters, which I think are just two great elements that make this episode really work for me. After such a great episode, we go back to average with this one, as it's the first of the two-parter with the next one. So immediately I want to say I'm not a fan of the events in the episode that happen in LA, as basically the whole episode is the team breaking into an overflow camp in LA where they find out there are other people being categorized to help with the population surplus of all the people that are still alive thanks to the miracle. Now, yes, it is very intriguing to find this information out throughout this episode, but how they present the LA scenes just doesn't flow and just becomes less intriguing after a while, and then they start to become more boring. Now, the stuff of Gwen, Reese, and Andy in the UK, that stuff's amazing. I love it as I feel Gwen's struggle to find her dad with all the bodies in the overflow camp, and how she's only trying to save him for what she finds out, which is the bodies that are getting burnt alive. Which, when you find out, is really horrifying. And hell, when you see it happen to Vera at the end of the episode, you're on your edge of your seat trying to find out if there's a way that Gwen can not let this happen. Overall, it's an alright episode with a great section outside the UK, but inside the US, it's a bit lackluster otherwise, but it does contain a powerful ending that will keep you asking what will happen next. Continue from the first part, we still have to deal with the scenes in LA, and I'm sorry, but I still don't like it. Unfortunately, they dragged on and made the episode a little bit slow when it cut back to them, so when it was over, it was nice to see it wrapped up without having to need to go back to the plot again. However, Gwen's part of the story is great because it has some standout moments, especially with Reese's breakthrough of the camps with his truck and Gwen's blow up the buildings, which is a great wow moment on screen. But to be honest, out of everything, I much prefer Jack's story of the episode, where he hunts down the answers from the head of Fight Club, Stuart Owens, as it actually feels like stuff is being discovered. It's just a shame that it's just a small part of the episode, as I really would have liked to see a bit more of it. Overall, it's an average conclusion with two great thirds to this episode, whilst one other is not entertaining in the slightest. If only this episode had focused more on its strengths than its weaknesses, then it probably wouldn't be so apparent. Okay, cards on the table. This is probably my favourite episode of the season, is in my top 10 of the show. Why? Well, what this episode gets is what fragments for Series 2 got, which is the hook for the flashbacks that have been tied into the series, as the episode proves to be the biggest point of the story arc of the series, as it only uses Gwen, Jack, and the flashbacks of Jack's own past, which I've always wanted to see them try again, and this episode accepts that we get more, and it gives us more. Everything from the beginning of the flashbacks to Jack and new character Angelo Calasanto to the end just feels very earned. Angelo and Jack's relationship feels well-paced and well-organised, despite the fact it's only actually 35 minutes of the episode. You really feel the sense of the adventure that Angelo gets with Jack, whilst helping him like the Doctor and Jack would. And you also really feel the betrayal that Jack feels once Angelo finds out about Jack's immortality and how much he hates Jack for being able to live forever unlike himself. So overall, it's a really fantastic episode that works to its strengths of not only being in the season, but using one of the things that helped the show in the past to help fragments become one of my favourites, which is the great uses of Jack's past and how it attains to the events of the present. And here's the episode which I can call being the weakest of the season. How? Well, one of the reasons why is because it's all set inside one home and only in a couple of rooms, and all the characters do is talk for a long time until the end of the episode. This episode obviously relies on the cost-effective way of trying to allow bigger things to happen off screen, which really doesn't work because of how much of the story has grown and how shoving it off to save money doesn't really work in a standstill. And by the end, the team go their separate ways, and it all ends on a bit of a whimper, with Rex having to go back to the CIA, Jack and Esther being on the run, and Gwen having to just give up the whole thing afterwards. Even the subplot about Oswald feels off because it feels just too mean-spirited after the fun we've had with him in early episodes, and it doesn't feel earned because of the horrible traits of his character that have only been really told to us, but never shown on screen. Even by then, by the end of the episode, Jilly and Oswald separate, which means it's more of a whimper because I like the duo, and I thought it would have been nice for him to continue on the path with Jilly. So, overall, I'm not really a fan of this episode, and I can easily say it's the weakest of the 10, with it all feeling like a bit of a last-minute rewrite. I'm sorry. I really like this episode. There's one reason behind that. It brings back my favourite writer from Children of Earth, John Fay, who penned the second and the fourth episodes, especially the fourth, which was probably the best one. And it's great to see his return, as I really think he hits it out here with this episode. In this episode, we kind of make a proper return to Cardiff as the team players gather themselves to find the last clues, which is really causing this miracle. And they really have a good time spent in Cardiff as we discover what the miracle truly is through Jilly, who gets some really great moments in this episode. Hell, Oswald finally meets the Torchwood team, well, apart from Jack, as he also has a few great moments with him, especially from the blunt remarks from Reese. But as much as I really like this episode, once the team gets out of Cardiff and out of that homely feel, it does falter a little because it goes back to the separating teams aspect of episodes 5 and 6, as they need to find the locations of the miracle, find out how to stop Miracle Day from destroying the world any longer. Overall, some great work from John Fay, who brings this series back home and then abroad. It doesn't make it feel different to how it's been or how it was the last time he was involved in the series. And finally, the final episode, which I think is alright. I mean, the first 30 minutes has a solid enough story that feels epic, with the two Torchwood teams discovering the locations of the miracle, as the whole story culminates into them finding it, and then the episode kind of stops for a bit. This is where I think the episode has a faltering moment, as it spends its time talking about the situation instead of dealing with it, which only occurs after they talk for about 6 or 7 minutes. By then, the episode is nearly over, which gives the episode that uneasy feeling of cramming too much into it. Speaking about cramming too much in, the last 10 minutes goes off the rail, with the miracle blown up with Oswald finally meeting his end, Gwen's father dying as the world is reset, and then Esther also dies as well. I mean, that's all good, but the problem with it is it's all in the space of 10 minutes, which makes me think that it should have been placed further apart from everything. But then we get a big cliffhanger ending, which is that Rex is now immortal as the series ends. So overall, it's like Journey's End. It fits way too much into the running time, and it thinks it can make it work, which it tries, but it doesn't succeed fully, as it just feels a bit bloated. At least this is a good watch and can make a good ending to the series, despite its cliffhanger. So, in conclusion, this series is just okay. It definitely has its problems, which do amount to one episode which I can call bad, and 3 that I can call generally average, but I can say there are a high amount of success in this series that most people think, with standout episodes that work along with other good classics from Series 2 in Children of Earth. Yeah, it may not be good as Children of Earth, but at least it made a good impression for the spin-off series, for the better and for the worse. Anyways, thank you for watching the video and sitting through 2 years of me talking on this channel. I'm rather glad for the team for keeping me here for so long, and for me to have this chance to talk about stuff like Torchwood. It's been a great pleasure. Now, I will say once this video goes out, I will be on my usual break for this year, as usual, as I've been working on all these videos from December until now, and I don't want to cause myself burnout before the end of the year, so I'm going to say now I won't be here during August, but I will be back here in September, ready and waiting for the new content that will hopefully entertain you all. Because as you know, the 21st century is how everything changes, and the Whoniversals are ready. Thank you, and goodbye.